Hey team, how are we doing? Welcome back to another video. As always, please like, please subscribe. You know the deal by now. Help a brother out. Today's video, we're going to talk about knowing your numbers.
I'd like to start the bidding at £150,000.
Any one of you out there that's an aspiring entrepreneur, a leader, a manager, even if you're not in a position of authority but you've got ambition to get there, you've got to know your numbers. I work with a lot of people that do know the numbers, and I work with probably more that don't. Knowing your numbers is important. Doesn't mean we have to be trained accountants. It doesn't mean you need to understand necessarily what EBITDA means. That help can be sought, but you need to know the basics to get yourself from A to B. Not just because you should know, but also because you need to be in a place where you can't have the wool pulled over your eyes. You should be able to run the numbers in your head, even if it's almost like a bar tab. Turnover, gross margins, overheads, what's left at the end. Really basic terminology. You don't have to get into what technically should be in an overhead or shouldn't, what classes as EBIT or EBITDA or pity bit, depending on which company, accountant, or what type of format you use in terms of financial structure. If you're going to work in a business or own a business or run a business, it's not acceptable to not know your numbers. Lots of people can struggle with numbers. That's not to criticise them, alienate them. You have to be aware and you have to manage towards that end. You need to surround yourself with people that you can inherently trust, because particularly if it is your business and you're going to hand over the financial management to somebody else, you really need to trust that person. But even if you struggle with numbers and even if you find a person you trust, you need to keep a scorecard for yourself. So for me, the basics, and I separate cash from this, we'll talk cash. So don't get lost in terminology. Profit and losses can be super scary.
The bid stands at £4 million.
They are actually, if you follow the column down, pretty self-explanatory, and then across the top. However, in a world where a lot of people have not faced P&Ls, and certainly not if you're a manager in a big business where it will be a fairly, I would imagine, complicated, in-depth P&L with things like depreciation and amortisation, ignore all that. If you've got your own business, or you're a manager, or you're in a position of influence, try and focus in on the stuff that you need to know. What's the turnover? And when I say turnover, there's different. Total sales, revenue, that kind of terminology. How much money do you take in a day, in a week, in a month? Off the back of the turnover, drop down and then understand the gross profit, which is essentially what you make on whatever you're selling. Under your gross profit will then come things, again, there's all different terminologies, fixed cost, overheads.
Costs or overheads are the things that you need to pay for whether you sell anything or not. So these are the things that if your income is zero, so if you make no money whatsoever, you still have to pay them.
Stuff like rent, salaries, stuff that even if you had no sales, as we've seen in COVID, a lot of businesses, no sales, still got fixed costs, i.e. people they have to pay, rent they've got to pay. At the bottom of that, and there's all sorts of bits in the middle, but for now ignore it. If you do not know numbers well enough, focus on turnover, what's your gross profit, what should you be making on the things that you're selling, and then at the very bottom, what's your profit? What is the contribution? And as I say, there's tax, there's all sorts of other things, but roughly, if you can understand those three things, your turnover, your gross profit, and for the sake of this conversation, your net profit. You should not have the wool pulled over your eyes. You should, as a leader and an owner and as a manager, be able to roughly, all things being equal, i.e. things running as they normally should, be able to say what you think the profit is off the back of that. Not the gross profit, because we're assuming you're maintaining that. What does it drop through? What is that profit? They're the three things I would advise anyone that struggles with numbers to focus on. Understanding the turnover is not because we just want to see big sexy numbers posted.
200,000, 250, 3.
Oh?
That's when I dragged you out.
You mean it ended up at £300,000?
It's because if you've looked into the business, you'll understand what it should drop through. So if you're turning over X, you should know that Y in any given standard month should drop through. Know your numbers and own the numbers. That's not to belittle you or make you feel embarrassed if you're a leader or an owner or someone who struggles with numbers. Loads of people do. Loads of people do. But you can still be a great entrepreneur, great businessman, great business lady, great manager, great leader, because you manage around all those areas where you need to improve. But make sure you've got someone with you that you trust. They give you the information to know where to focus in on. Your job is to wear multiple hats as that leader. The strategy, the sales, the marketing, but you've got people. Or if you're a small business, you have to learn those things. But in financial terms, even if you are a small business, principally you'll have an accountant. Therefore, you've got your numbers person, but you still need to know enough that you know if they're pulling the wool over your eyes. And then that moves you on to cash. Cash and profit and losses, and for those of you in big businesses will understand what I mean. Your working cash flow model is very different to your profit and loss. It's not always the case that because you've made £40,000 that month, that there is £40,000 in the bank. Because the cash flow, what we call profile of the cash, a sale can happen, therefore it's in the books, but the cash may be paid on delivery. Or the sale happens in this month, paid on delivery, therefore the booking will show at the point of delivery, even though you've sold it a few months before. And those of you watching the video will have to understand the nuances in your business, because there's when you recognise a sale and when you get paid. In the case of an event, all the ticket sales come before the event, but you will recognise the revenue from the event in the month the event happens, not in all the months leading up to it when the ticket sales are coming in. So focus on cash as well as your turnover, your gross margin, and then your profit. Cash is king. So just because you're profitable doesn't mean you'll always be cash rich, because you may have to spend and keep investing behind the scenes, and when you invest or buy an asset, you can do what's called depreciating, which you then, it's a bit like buying a car on finance. You take something that you've paid 30 grand up front for it, but in your books, so in your accounts, you spread that over the lifespan that you think it will last for, so 5 years. So there you go, you spent the 30 grand in cash, but if you look in your accounts, you may have then spread it out in chunks of £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 a year for X number of years. So you can see there, you've spent the 30, but in your accounts it'll look like you have the money. When I say learn to understand your cash, it is no more difficult than a daily, weekly, monthly check on the profile of cash. And a good accountant, a good financial support, or if you don't have one, you need to get one, because cash profile in your business is important. You need to tot up what you know, so what I call the burn rate. What does it take to run your business? The salaries, ordering your stock. You know roughly on any given week what you're going to spend, and if you don't find out, absolutely find out. Foolhardy if you've opened a business without understanding your weekly and monthly running costs. Know what your weekly and monthly burn rate is. How much money needs to come in that I can keep the lights on and people paid. So again, you're running a tab. You're now managing your cash, which is very different to your profit and loss. We're spending £7,000 a week. Right, we've got to bring in £7,000 to start with. and you need to bring in more than £7,000 to make a profit, or you're just covering your costs. And this is where we separate your profit and loss from your cash management. And a lot of people do, my experience, if you're in a big business, you're probably watching this focusing on the profit and loss, because some FD in a room somewhere worries about the cash. You don't have to. You've got to worry about your P&L, as we call it. And if you're an independent business owner, you worry about the cash. I spent this much came in, I'm up. Therefore you're profitable. But in your books you might not be. Just because you're cash rich doesn't always mean that you're profitable, and just because you're profitable doesn't mean that you are cash rich. The bits that I'm hoping you take from this video is look at your profit and loss. If you're not good with numbers, turnover, revenue, whatever you want to call it, your gross profit, your profit, the bit that drops through at the bottom, manage your cash. What's my weekly and monthly burn rate? Therefore you know how much you need to bring in to at least cover your bills. Those two things need to be in place in every business if you're going to run forward. And when I say know your cash, that doesn't mean you have to have a big fancy spreadsheet. It means logging into the bank account. It means writing on a piece of paper, I pay David this, I pay Jimmy that, I pay Susan this, and then I pay whatever, the veg man, then I pay the cake person, the bread person, and before you know it, you've got a list of costs, money that's going to go out. Therefore, totals that, I need to bring in at least that. My advice is the bits that I've just talked through. Someone might give you something slightly different, but all advice would be, don't bury your head and hope that it works itself out, because invariably it will not, because you are the one that needs to worry about it. So take the responsibility, understand your profit and loss so that you know that you are, as a business, profitable. But particularly in the small businesses, and I mean particularly in the small businesses where you're generally going to be independent or not have a financial controller or someone there, check the bank account, check on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, whatever's right for your business, so that you know your, as I say, what I call burn rate. So that's it for today. Hopefully a useful video.
So, what was the final outcome?
Few hints and tips, and for those of you that are thinking of making the leap of faith, hopefully a few helpful things that maybe you don't talk about.
Just over 3 million each.
Well, we've had worse days.
But make it your business to know them. So that's it, guys. As always, please like and subscribe, as I said at the beginning, but most importantly, stay safe, take it easy. See you in a bit. Bye.